Alright, I'm doing a show today. I saw a post on Alan Wayne's wall, and Showbilly stuck out his fangs, when something conservative got said on his wall. So he's very pedantic towards politics, to, the liberal left. So I wanted to put in my 2 cents to kind of explain the way I see it. And I understand that the basic statement from the left is that requiring a valid photo ID would disenfranchise minority voters, because many minority voters tend to be the poorest, and supposedly many don't have photo ID because they cannot afford them or they can't travel to get them. And thus, the Republicans are trying to disenfranchise minority voters by requiring a standard photo ID to vote. And some of the opposition to that is that, hey, you need a photo ID for like alcohol, cigarettes, opening up a bank account, cashing a check at a check cashing place, applying for food stamps, applying for welfare, Medicaid, Social Security, applying for unemployment or even a job, renting a house, buying a house, renting an apartment, if you want to rent, buy, or drive a car, if you want to get on an airplane, getting on a Greyhound bus for out-of-city or out-of-state travel, marriage, a gun, adopting a pet, a hotel, hunting license, fishing license, cell phones. In case you don't know about cell phones these days, they're trying to make them a lot less anonymous, so you got to verify. I know, it sucks. Casinos. Hey, if you hit it big, you got to show some ID. And prescriptions. Every demographic definitely needs those. It's just a matter of who's paying for them at that point. If you want to sponsor an official rally or protest, better show some ID. Blood donations. Buying M-rated video games. Certain behind-the-counter medications, such as cold medications. If you want to get a P.O. box, you need an ID. And there's public housing. That also requires an ID. So while it's fair to say the poorest cannot get on planes or purchase guns, buy cars, we also have to point out that quite a few of those programs I just mentioned are actually more beneficial to the poor. And you also need a valid photo to establish, if you qualify for other government programs. And a lot of these programs are designed to help the poor. And one of the reasons why they require a photo ID is to help eliminate fraud. Let me say that again. They require a photo ID to help eliminate the fraud. But, no one from the left complains about that being racist or how that's wrong. But it's only when it comes to showing a photo ID to vote. But if you look at other conversations about race, or at least when it's tied to race, they'll say minorities are the ones always being solely disenfranchised there. And let's be honest, we're talking about Hispanics and blacks, as Asians are family-oriented and well-educated, so we got to exclude them, even though they're largely liberal. You'll also see sometimes liberals and conservatives argue about race, and a big issue actually pops up, that whites are the biggest recipients of welfare and food stamps, but the poor white demographic is oftentimes written off by these people because they're backwards, rednecks, white trash. And just remember, many leftists are arguing this as a racial issue, not an economic one. So poor whites again get the shaft. Someone mentioned the 24th Amendment trying to compare the voter ID to poll taxes, which is not the same. That's apples and oranges. Poll tax is when you show up, and in order to vote, you got to pay up. And that's a totally different concept than proving who you are. And you can try to twist that as much as possible, but it's not the same. There are many functions and benefits that the poor use and get with a photo ID, as I mentioned earlier, that the wealthy will actually never use. There's many shared things like alcohol, cigarettes, prescriptions that every demographic uses. We're talking about getting a yearly photo ID that costs about $10 to $15. And I don't know about your state, but when I was 16, I got my driver's license. It was like $10, and it was good for 50 years. I'm not kidding, 50 years. And you don't have to have your own car. You can borrow a friend's or relatives. I don't know. I'm hoping all the other states are something, or have something similar, but who knows. So we got to stop pretending that we aren't a first world nation here, and that somehow obtaining a photo ID is just an impossible racist feat, when we know that the poor in America generally have more than the poor anywhere else. That whooping $10 to $15 fee to get a state ID has many uses for every single living person in this country. Just like it seems like every demographic smokes or drinks, it doesn't matter about income. And I can see why the left would want to champion this cause, because it makes them look like heroes in the campaign to end racism where it doesn't really exist, without having to do really anything but just scream racism. God forbid we verify voters to make sure they are eligible to vote or potentially prevent voter fraud, because I wonder what party benefits the most from illegals or felons or other unregistered people from voting. What party will look the other way to potential voter fraud so it can have a few extra votes in their favor at the polls? You gotta look at it from that way as well. So my conclusion is that it's a silly concept to conclude that voter ID is racist, because the photo ID has so many benefits to every single person, age 16 and up. So you can try to sway it as racist, or you can accept the fact that it's an extra identification step that many other countries use, and no one dares call them racist. Because I said, what party benefits the most from potential voter fraud? Well, the one that wants to take away that extra verification step. And since plenty of programs and places require a photo ID that no one wants to call racist, I think it's beyond silly to call this racist or disenfranchising minorities. We call that procedure.